Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to the regularly scheduled Public Safety Committee meeting on Monday, May 15th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of April 17th?
Motion to approve the minutes of May 17th, April 17th, rather. Thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. They pass. The meeting is now open to the public for comment. If anybody in the public would like to approach the podium. I don't believe we have anybody in queue logging in from outside other than our Health Director, Charles Brown. No public comment? All right. Seeing none, we're moving on to departmental updates. And we start off with Chief Gary, Fire.
Thank you, sir. Just hit a couple of high points and then a couple other things here, but 59 incidents responded to during the month of April, and we recorded 231 training hours. In the report, you'd see our staffing with 15 at Station 1, 19 at Station 2, 13 at Station 3, 7 in the fire police, 10 in the staff. And with that, we have 6 members on a leave of absence, various types, 2 military, 2 medical, and 2 administrative, for a total of 58 active members. I'm going to skip the facilities, supply, recruitment, retention side. There were 4 drone activations last month. Let's see, revenue recovery program generated 3 new chargeable events, and we had 12 limited access highway forms were completed for a total of $6,000. And that brought our total up to 80,000, and that's less than what I reported last month, but I'll explain that in a second. As of today,
And you also mentioned that the collection was going fine.
the collection is going fine. We're owed a few.
Reimbursement is going fine.
Yep, we're owed a few, but the collection is going as well as it can be expected. The state pays in about 60 days. Mona's nodding at me, so I hit that one right.
You are right.
The LAH program, as of today, we've billed out 85,000. This is down from last month a little bit because the state denied some of our billing, particularly when it comes to fire police and staff, fire police closing the exits, et cetera. The reason is that their reasoning, is that these companies are not comprised of suppression personnel. We are appealing. Though more to follow on that once we get in front of the panel. Since January 1st, we've had about 250 calls for service, just about 16% greater than this time last year. We are averaging about 17 firefighters per call, and that number can be a little misleading as we do have a number of single company and 2 company calls which limit the response. The membership has about 4,100 individual responses, and that's a lot of time leaving your household. Quick comparison from last year's call stats show an increase in all categories across the board. Although during the cold snap in early February, we did have a spike in service-related calls for water leaks, et cetera. And I stand by for questions.
Councilor O'Sullivan.
Yeah, a couple of things, Chief. First of all, going back to the highway reimbursements, so you said we're up to about $80,000 or so?
Correct. So 85 billed as of today.
So can you refresh our recollection on what that money is expected to be spent for? That's in a special fund, I believe, right? It's one of our...
That's in a fund that's going for purchase of 2 replacement transmitters for the fire frequencies.
Okay.
Okay. It's the current, and we locked it in last week, the current quote on that was 101,000. So we expect to meet that by July 1st.
That's great. And secondly, you noted an overall 16% increase, more or less, in service
Yes.
calls for the first third of the year. Can you give us any insight to any trends or what accounts for that?
We looked, I reviewed it, I saw no spikes. I have the data over here. I have no spikes, we have no spikes in any particular category. It's pretty much even all across. Again, with the exception of that little pop in the beginning of February, I think it was the February 5th weekend, where we had those super Arctic cold temperatures, resulted in a number of water leaks. But it's just up in all categories, Bill.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
No questions for me at this time.
Questions
Thank
at
you.
all? Uptick, nothing to do with malicious type activity or funny
No,
business, it's just stuff fails.
Right, we haven't seen that, yes.
Yeah, not vandalism or related or anything like that, so cool. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Charlie, are you good to go in your normal spot at the end?
Wherever you need me, sir.
Would you like to go right now?
I can go right now as well, yes.
Why don't we have your report?
Okay, well, I'd be happy to report that the public health emergency for COVID-19 ended officially on May 11th, so that was last week on Thursday. We still have COVID circulating within the community, but at much, much lower levels. Right now, all the levels for infectious disease are generally down, including influenza and the norovirus that we were seeing circulating within our communities here over the past few months. We also are starting to see an increase in tick-borne diseases, so like Lyme disease, ehrlichiosis, and babesiosis. So just make sure that people are taking care as they're out enjoying this beautiful weather to make sure they're doing tick checks on their way in the door. Other than that, I stand ready to answer any questions from the committee.
Councilor O'Sullivan.
No questions. Thank you, Charlie.
No questions for me either.
All right, great.
Thanks, Charlie.
All right.
Th-
Thank y'all. Have a good afternoon.
You as well, thank you. Ambulance,
Thank you.
Chief?
Rocky Hill had 342 calls for the month of April, which brings our total up to 1,493. We had a total of 9 canceled calls. We had no patient contact calls. We had 1 call that was canceled prior to arrival. We had 5 lift assists, and we had 25 patient refusals. For the year so far, we've had 3 opioid-related transports and 3 cardiac arrests so far for 2023. We had 105 hours of training this month. We had 3 meetings. The first 2 were on bleeding and AED. We got new machines, so we did training, retraining on the employees, the members on the AED, and also we had our yearly meeting training on the Lucas and the suction use for the Lucas machine that we have, which is the machine that does the CPR for us. We had a standby at the Rocky Hill Community Center on the 1st for the bunny hop thing, the Easter hunt. We had the health service standby at the community center that we do checking vital signs and answering many medical questions for the seniors. And we also did the Terrier Tough on the 2nd at Elm Ridge Park. We just finished our EMT class. We have 4 people waiting for their state exams. And once they're through, they all showed interest in joining, so there's 4 more people that we have coming through the line for new EMTs. We have 39 active members, riding members. We have 9 associates. We have 15 probationary, 2 on medical leave, and 4 away on college, for a total of 69 people that we still have.
All right. We also have Aetna here to give an ambulance report for the services they provide to the town, but I thought we would go to questions first, and then just so it's fresh in your mind, if you want to ask questions.
Yeah, actually, my questions were about Aetna because I think we received the charts, right? The town managers. So if it will be great to for us to, if we can, if they can walk us through the charts on a high level. I know they are like a time series from like 2020, I guess.
But I mean, questions for
No, I don't have any questions right now. Thank you.
Earl Sullivan?
I don't either. Thank you.
I'm good at this point as well, so.
Thank you.
Thank you for the information. And if Aetna wants to present from the podium, would be great.
Just introduce yourself and.
How you doing, everybody? My name's Dave Kemp. I'm the clinical operations manager with Aetna Ambulance. So I think I have some information. It sounds like that you guys have been asking for a little while, so I'm excited to be able to share it with you. Just real quick, we'll go through our response data, and then if you have any questions on the tables and the charts that I sent you, feel free to ask those at the end. So overall, we saw a 14% increase in responses from 2021 to 2022, with the total calls being 2,546 responses by Aetna Ambulance. Year to date, January through April, we're looking at a 9% increase so far. Again, that's January through April of 2022 that it's being compared to. Medic 5 responses, which is the staff Rocky Hill flight car that we use for paramedic intercepts with the Rocky Hill Ambulance Association. We're looking at an 11% increase from 2021 to 2022. The year-to-date increase from January to April 2023 is down 17 calls or 7% compared to the April to January data. Overall, the responses for both, including the Medic 5 as well as the Aetna ambulances that respond, we're up 14% in total overall responses and 5% year-to-date, again, compared to that 2022 data. We did break down, I went ahead and I actually chart this anyways, so this was actually good, and we were a participant in the cardiac arrest registry for the enhancement of survival, which is done through the American Red Cross. So this is all data that we've had, and we can certainly get a little more granular about that data a little later on. It's not presented in this, but we can make that available to you guys at a later time. On average, Aetna completes about 36 cardiac arrest responses in a year. We're looking at a very slight increase, up 4% from 2021. And overall, the cardiac arrests, there's really two outcomes that we look at. So the first thing we look at is, was the patient transported to the hospital, or was the patient presumed on scene by our staff and in association with RHVA? So about 70 to 80% of those patients are presumed on scene, whether that be meaning that there was any resuscitation attempt was futile at that point, because that is lumped into there, where the patient had obvious signs of death, including like rigor mortis or dependent lividity, or all resuscitation attempts were exhausted and it was deemed by our medical control that it was not an appropriate patient to transport to the hospital. Opiate responses, and this is data that we've been tracking, for at least since 2018 in the city of Hartford. It was nice to actually look at the Rocky Hill data because the city of Hartford does have a significant opiate problem. We have seen an overall increase in opioid responses, up 24%. And year to date, we have seen a total of 6 opiate-related cases compared to 3 at this point in 2022. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as well. So that concludes kind of my data that I was going to present, but I'll open it up to you guys for any questions that you have of me.
Councilor O'Sullivan.
So a similar question to what I posed to Chief Gary, and that is, you showed a year-over-year increase of about 14% from 21 to 22. Are there any trends or anything jump out at you that would account for that?
I can certainly say that we saw with COVID-19, we saw a very significant work in the opposite direction. We did see a decrease for a while. So it's a number that I think, if you look at over a wider range, I think we're kind of falling back into a more of what would have been normal pre-COVID numbers. I think people are more willing now to go to the hospital. I think there was a lot of fear and some other stigmas that were related to the hospital where people were very hesitant to seek care, which I think plays into some of that cardiac arrest data where you see that there were an increase of presumptions because people just weren't seeking care for preventative things until it got too late that unfortunately we weren't able to assist them.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Prakash.
Yeah, so actually, on similar lines, but if you control for like what the Rocky Hill part of the response is versus where your part of response is, right? If you separate those cases out, do you see an increase on your side?
You mean in general, like Aetna by itself?
Aetna by itself.
I would say that we see the daytime, so we do cover the daytime volume, so that we have seen, in general, responses increase. I would not say that is significant in the face of without Rocky Hill Ambulance being there. So I don't know that data granularly off the surface, but my like anecdotal, what I think is happening is that it's just like a general across the board increase. I think they're probably also, without knowing their data, I won't speak for them.
Yeah.
They're probably also showing some increases. So I think it's just a general, like, it's just getting a little bit.
So the
busier across
context
the
I'm asking this is in like the context of do we need to be recruiting more to actually respond to that increased volume? So I'm assuming that you are taking more volume as well, and at with the same
The problem
rate of
is-
increase, probably.
The
Chief, yeah?
the increase of the people that are in the town during the day hours are significantly higher than at night. With the businesses, the doctor's offices being open, the walk-in medical center, a lot of the centers, we come on at 6 o'clock. A lot of the centers are closing at 6 or 7 o'clock. So if there is, but all day long, they're at the doctor's offices, the same falls, the same kind of, those calls are all the same that we're getting, lift assist, all those kinds of things. But there's the volume of people that are in this town during the day is double or triple than it is at night due to the fact of work. Once 6, 7 o'clock at night, the town is pretty much is closed around here, except the people that live in the town.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to like the load management aspect of it.
Oh,
like,
I mean-
how are we doing on the load management in terms of like the granularity of the numbers, right?
We'd love to have another couple ambulances on, and I'm sure they would love to have more ambulances on during the day too, because if you listen to the calls, they come in patterns. It's like all of a sudden they'll do one, and then 6 minutes later they'll do another, and then 10 minutes after that it's just continuous during the daytime. Sometimes it just gets real busy.
And I think, too, of what kind of you're hinting at is a problem that we're seeing not just, locally here, but across the state and probably even across New England, where we're seeing a lot of volunteer agencies struggle and even paid companies struggle to have the staffing. We're very fortunate at Aetna. Again, I can't speak for Rocky Hill staffing, but at least at Aetna, we've been very aggressive in hiring, and we've been able to keep a full complement of resources available so that we've actually been able to go out and cover other towns, hospitals, et cetera, that we would, maybe pre-COVID would never have considered of doing. But we are seeing it kind of globally is that is an issue. I don't think, though, that there's and like Chief Goodrich was implying, there's a lot of what happens in the EMS system is it all hits all at once. It's just like having that there. And that's why I think it's great that we have the relationship that we do. There's a lot of being able to backfill. They certainly have had instances where they will take the first call or sometimes the second call, and we will come in and get the third, the fourth, the fifth. Again, not numbers that I know off of the top of my head. I just speak from, the anecdotal of living it kind of day to day, hearing the radios go off and those wonderful tones causing us all kind of that like tone stress. You're like, oh gosh, and you hear it in your sleep. But, that kind of, hopefully that answers your question to a little bit.
Yeah, it gets to it. It definitely gets to it. What I would like to do, and if it's possible, if you guys can like actually reconcile some of your data, and if it's possible, I don't know, your systems are different, everything is different, I get that. But if you can put it like in front of each, like right side by side, some of these things, I think they become much more clearer, right? And just for like the full picture, because I get a picture from you, I get a picture from the chief, and I can put it together. It's just that it will be an effort for me right now, because I know you gave me a PDF. It has all the numbers, raw numbers in there, and the chief provides the numbers as well. So I can put it together, but I have to do it like in addition to my day job. So I'm happy to like go through the data and everything. But if you guys can work together, if it's possible, I know there is some limitations there, but because I think we'll get to a more clear answer maybe. That's what you did answer my question. You guys did, but I'm just looking for that next step. I think just from a perspective of like creating more efficiency in the system, and just being aware of like the load management, like if it has like significantly changed or even like moved or like whatever, right? From one side, like opioid like cases, maybe, I don't know. Just an example, right? So how you manage stuff pre-2020 versus how you do now, like probably it'll get better, like from a overall picture standpoint.
It sounds like you could have a lot of fun doing like demand analysis and looking at like the raw data of how things like split out and come into that. I think you'd have a lot of fun with that. I don't know how hard it would be. I'd have to talk. My CFO here is this is Heather Zimmerman.
We can certainly put that together for you, Brian. If you just email me your data, what time frame would you want? I guess
Sure.
Just let us know that, and we can certainly put it together. Typically, what I do is I compare 2019 to current, because 2019 was more regular volume as compared to when COVID-19 was occurring. The volume definitely, as Dave said, had a huge dip. So I've been comparing mostly 19 to 22, 23.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman, do you need to come up here like for the record, or I don't know? I was just pointing, I'm happy to have that conversation, but
No, I think, I'm sorry. Yeah, sure.
yeah, I know like it doesn't pick up, so I didn't want to continue that conversation. No, thank you so much for offering that. For the time period, right? Whatever is available in terms of like that overlap from Chief Goodrich and you, like that's fine with me. Like basically the idea is, for the last 3 years of trend, like from 20, starting pre-COVID and post-COVID, right, essentially.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's not an issue.
Okay.
Yeah, if you get that over to me, I can do that pretty quickly for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
course,
it.
no problem.
And thanks for coming up.
Of course.
Any other questions I can answer for you guys?
Yep. So I was just, the 25 refusals, that was, what was that number again? 25 for the time period or for all year to date?
No, that was just for the month.
Just for 1 month?
Yeah, we do a lot of lift assists, and we do a lot of people that just don't want to go to the hospital, but they still have to, since we provided care for them, they still have to sign a refusal that they don't want to go to the hospital.
That was my next question. They're signing a
They have to
release
sign
or
a
whatever.
Release
yeah.
against medical advice, because every time we go, we always, obviously, every time, are you sure you don't want to go? We always suggest, we always encourage, we always say, it's better if you get checked out, but a lot of our assisted living facilities and different places that we have, they have strict policies that their staff doesn't lift people up off the floor. They weren't trained on it, whatever. It's getting to be very time consuming for us, because a lot of times we're tied up on a basic fall where they just need to be put back into a chair, and then, yet we still have to get like vital signs. We have to do all our stuff that we have to do to make sure that other things aren't going on, and then there's could be another 2 calls going on by the time we get cleared with that, and it goes up on them. All of a sudden, they're doing 2 calls, and then we're back and available. It's just, it's just a crazy cycle that it gets to at times.
Okay. And for Aetna, the refusals?
Off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to give you the exact number. I can tell you just looking at it, because that is a number that we look at for us as a system. So usually we look at, our goal is to do anywhere between 60 to 65% transports of all responses that we do. And of the ones that we don't transport, it usually ends up being about a 15% patient refusal rate, which is kind of like Chief Goodrich described. It could be as simple as somebody that needs assistance getting up off of a floor. I think Rocky Hill, and again, anecdotal, don't put me on, it's on record, but I can't say for sure. Rocky Hill has a fairly decent-sized elderly population, as well as the assisted livings that we do go to fairly frequently to assist patients off the floor, for that type of call does happen.
Sure.
But you're looking at about 15%. So if you look at the volume, that we showed you for the year to date, if you do about 15%, that would be a rough estimate. And she's my math person, so I'm not going to do any math here for you.
We can certainly get you the results.
But we can look into it. I just don't have it on the data available necessarily for Rocky Hill at this point.
And lastly, I just was interested in the fact, we're always asking about the opioid response or calls for Rocky Hill, and we thank God we're very light, if any. And I noticed, just jumped out at me that you respond. You said you're up 14%.
That's correct. So And we've seen that in some of the suburban towns that we cover, that there is an increase across the board, which is concerning. And I think there's a couple things, without being, I'm certainly not a public health expert. I can only report on the data that we have. My hunch is that we're getting better at knowing when to report it. So we participate, just like Rocky Hill does, in the statewide opiate reporting directive, which went into effect, I want to say, in early 2020. Could have been in 2019. Was it 2020? Thank you, Heather. So that all comes into heat mapping, and actually there's an interface for the police department to be able to look at it, and it also goes up as high as the federal level for them to be able to see where surges and where specific hot areas, so to speak, are. I wouldn't say that Rocky Hill necessarily has, a really hot area compared to what we see, relative to a city of Hartford, but we've certainly seen an increase in that over those last years. I think some of it's a little bit more awareness, understanding that it's not just heroin. There's certainly fentanyl, and there's also mixes of prescription medications. And I know offhand that prescription medications is the leading cause for people to become addicted to opiates. So certainly people go to surgery, they get on, on oxycodone for 3, 4, and 5 months, and then they just can't get off of it. And then they go to seek, it's not cutting anymore, so they go to seek more and more potent things, and then they get into kind of some of the more street type drugs. So
Yeah, I mean, 14% for the public means 6.
right,
I mean, so if the reality is we're
it's a scary 14%
still
is
6
scary.
too many, but 14%
it's not.
just means
It's a small
6
number that
calls.
went up a little bit, and I think something worth monitoring as we progress throughout the the years to come. And there's definitely, and certainly, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot. The police department and federal agencies all have the ability to kind of get resources in as they see this come in. That's the whole purpose of the statewide opioid reporting, was to be able to mobilize resources when they start to see problems in real time, as opposed to so reactive as me being up here 2 months ago saying, oh, by the way, guys, you had 15 overdoses this month. We want to be able to handle that in real time to be able to get that out to people.
Well, any further questions?
Yeah, can I circle back to something? You mentioned it, and maybe Chief Kuduch as well, what you described as these situations where someone in an assisted living facility has fallen to the ground, is not otherwise in medical distress, is not a real emergency situation, but there's no one on site to get them back up, and so we're calling a full ambulance crew. I mean, it just seems colossally inefficient. Can you shed a little more light on that? I mean, that has to spark some conversation somewhere about a better way.
Yeah, has
It
that
does.
always been?
Oh, well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Yeah, I mean, has that always been the
Yeah.
It has,
protocol,
and
the call.
and we've been fortunate enough. So we're unfortunately, as ambulance companies, and I have my big boss here coming up to give her answer on that. As ambulance companies, we really are left with 2 options, which is treat or transport, which leaves us the least amount of liability, or get a refusal. There's really not this. There's kind of this realm that some of the road employees will go into, where they try to do a cancel, no patient found type of deal. We encourage them, anytime you put hands on a patient, that should result in a patient refusal. So I'm going to have her talk about this. There's actually been some awareness at the state level. I think Heather can.
Yeah, because what I'm talking about is what happens before you guys are called. So once that happens, it's kind of, your hands are kind of tied as far as protocols you have to follow, and I get that. But the trigger, it seems to be that whether it's a legal issue or just a corporate policy or whatever it is, that we can't touch this person on the floor. Let's bring in a whole crew of ambulance people to sit them back up again. Something seems amiss here.
Yeah, so in the middle of 2021, we did advocate with OEMS, who sets all the ambulance rates for the state of Connecticut, and they did agree to give us a rate for treat no transport. So we are now able to bill for treat no transport. So if a patient is if you go in for a lift assist, obviously if the person fell, we do still want to check them out, make sure they're okay, take their vitals. So in those circumstances, we can still bill. It's a very minimal dollar amount we get, but it is better than nothing, which is what we used to get. So,
Chief, you're also able to bill?
like I said, it's a very minimal dollar amount.
Well, I wasn't thinking about it so much in terms of your ability to bill it, but just in terms of the
resources.
The resources, the strain on the men and the women who have to make these calls. I mean, we had a description of, you get one of these calls and another, maybe more urgent call comes on your radio. That's more what I'm focused on rather than the financial side of it.
So during the day, we are staffed with multiple supervisors on duty. So if we do have those calls in, sometimes instead of taking one of our full ambulances, we'll send our supervisors supervisors in a fly car to be able to do the lift assist, instead of wasting a whole ambulance resource. So right now, I can say Aetna is fully staffed to our full staffing levels, so we are lucky with that. But I don't know if there's anything else you want.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm really talking about, though, is, again, before you get the call, these policies that apparently exist within the facilities that they can't touch the person, that they cannot or will not
Correct.
lend assistance. That's what I'm talking about. Is there a law that has some bearing on that, or is it just company policy?
No,
that-
it's all company policy. I'm sure you probably see it with dialysis facilities. DaVita is one of the main ones. They do not allow their employees to move the patients. So that is a big one where we have to do lift assist with
Yeah.
typically.
It sounds like a liability issue, well, maybe.
It is. It's 100% a liability issue. The companies do not want their employees touching the patients.
Yeah, but I do understand your fundamental point there. I mean, it just sounds like somebody is afraid of the liability, and I don't know, like, what we can do to mitigate that from a systemic perspective.
Well, they don't want the liability, but so they'll put it on you. So,
Right.
I mean, somebody has to step up, and it just seems that what we have in place here is just something very, very inefficient. That we're, again, what may be not a truly urgent situation is bringing in, resources and again, potentially helping burn people out for one thing. But also a diversion of resources where they may really be needed. And again, my question is this something that's ever discussed, like at the legislature, or something in terms of whether it's a regulation of some kind or some type of limitation on their liability if they do render this type of assistance? I mean, is that conversation happening? Because we just seem to be stuck in this cycle that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
As of right now, no, there is no legislation surrounding this, and it's not really being discussed with legislation. I don't know. There's a lot of other bills going on surrounding ambulance and legislation right now, but not with regards to lift assists.
Well, you can't. We have public comment earlier. Right, but we're trying to just stay in our format.
And I do think, just to go along with what you're saying, it is an issue that I think as we all have to pay attention to, because it is a real strain on resources. I think it's a multifaceted answer to basically say, not only how do we prevent, when you have potential resources there, so if you have staff that could do it, it's also, how do we prevent the fall from happening in the first place? So I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's kind of where we're at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
You would think they have the medical capability to take on the liability, right?
You think?
You think. Then they just need somebody strong to help with the lift.
Right.
On staff at the time of the fall. I'm just going to go back over to Chief. Did you want to expound any more on that or call up your numbers person?
Yeah, I mean, Nancy knows more about it than I would about it. She sits on the state board of the
Sure.
policies and stuff, so if Nancy wants to say something, yeah.
Yeah.
So your question, I didn't anticipate it, otherwise I would have had something presented for Brian
Sure,
the
just
Chief
state your
Goodrich to
name
say.
and-
Nancy Brescia, Deputy Chief,
Rocky
Rocky Hill
Hill
Volunteer
Ambulance,
Ambulance. So in my experiences from the past 15 years doing of lift assist, the assisted livings are not regulated by the Department of Public Health. Therefore, there's no oversight for them to say, oh, you have to have staff that are trained in lifting and whatnot, as the nursing homes have to. The nursing homes are more regulated, and that's the DPH. Assisted livings are not. So when it came the time when these assisted livings developed, they didn't have a full house. So who did they take? They took people that perhaps were bariatric, that perhaps needed specialized lift equipment, and they couldn't manage them. So then they wrote EMS into the policy so their staff wouldn't get hurt, and they didn't have the equipment to lift people back to beds. And this would be for the facilities that are not regulated by the DPH. So therefore, we go in and we help them. And again, it's difficult. It's just difficult to do. I have statistical data. I've spoken to the assisted livings. We've tried to work out plans. We've had numerous in-services on safe lifting techniques because we don't want to hurt our people. But, and again, I'm sure the commercials have seen a lot of lifting injuries from just that. So until we can better get this regulated and out there, I think it's something that people haven't touched. And I sit on the State Connecticut Advisory Board for EMS. We've looked at things, but again, it's not a priority issue.
So do the nursing homes handle their own lifts? I mean,
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
So that's the
Except
distinction. Okay.
And you know what? By golly, if their Hoyer lift went out and they weren't able to help lift a patient, which happened recently, we went out there in the ambulance. We helped their staff because we're not going to leave them. That's just I'm sure the commercial services wouldn't leave them.
But the primary responsibility is in-house there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's a regulation.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the police department. Chief Collette.
Good evening. I apologize for my voice, but the allergy season is upon us, and everything I've tried has not worked, and I lost my voice over the weekend, so I will do my best for you. But before I begin, today and this week is the National Law Enforcement Appreciation Week, and actually today is the recognized day. So if you're listening and you're at home and here and you see one of our officers out there, for me personally and publicly to thank them, our men and women do a great job. But if you have an opportunity to let one of them know this week while you're out there, they greatly appreciate hearing your words from you. So for the month, we have 3,290 calls for service, 24 criminal arrests, 32 motor vehicle accidents, 0 DUIs, 44 infractions, 125 warnings issued, 8 town tickets issued, 27 ACO calls, 3 community service events, which I'll share some details on in just a second, 2 car seat installations, and 425 hours of training, which revolves around some of our required firearms training with use of force, our required recertification programming, as well as some autism awareness training that we conducted. Those community service events were you've heard about the Hop on the Hill Easter egg hunt. We participated in that this year. The VFW Post 2138 assisted us, and we put on a program. Lieutenant Moore was instrumental in putting together an autism awareness training where we actually brought in a young man with autism and got to speak with him firsthand and ask him direct questions and get to know them a little bit better and understand their limitations. And our program with the motor vehicle stop was an opportunity for those with autism to kind of be educated as to how we are going to react and act with them on stops and how to best get through those stops with a reduced amount of stress. It was a great program, very successful. We had a DEA National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day, which we set a record for all the years past. We've done 165 pounds of medication and drugs, and was basically taken in and then destroyed over at the DEA over on Brook Street. It was a very successful operation. And then we had a wellness fair with one of our school resource officers, where we interacted with some students and talked to them about the impact of drunk driving. For the month, like I told you, I would update you and keep you posted on some of the recent events in town. The leaflet event, as you know, did resurface. I can tell you that we've reached out, working with both state, federal, and also the joint JTTF, the Joint Task Force, with some other agencies. And also our offices have been coordinating with the town staff, looking for some educational opportunities through the U.S. Attorney's Office as well. And our car theft, as you know, kind of where we started back in April, that's what I was inherited on my first week. We are currently still actively working that case, do have some suspect information, and currently have most recently submitted a couple search warrants that have yielded some good information. But this is it's a long process, and you got to take the little puzzle pieces and put them all together, but it is currently active and still as active as it was on the first day. As far as staffing is concerned, we do still have 3 on light duty. One, I do believe, may be getting cleared this week to return to full status, and the other 2 are still out. Both shoulder injuries, I've mentioned before. We did have a resignation of one of our dispatch candidates. Unfortunately, just the magnitude, I think, the element of the dispatch job, she realized that just a lot of different things and multitasking at the same time, and just kind of reached a point where she made the choice to depart. So we did actually still have an existing list and did make a conditional offer to another candidate, and that's an active process. We'll be moving forward with that shortly. And we do have a remaining vacancy in dispatch for which, once the budget is adopted, give that some time and discussions with the manager's office about going out and starting another process for that vacant position. And then we did approximately 32 hours of additional patrol that was funded by the grant, the ARPA grant, to bolster our visibility and patrols in response to the car thefts and those events back in April. Beyond that, I think that's all I have for you. If you have any questions.
Councilor O'Sullivan.
I do. So first, Chief, thank you for that report. I want to applaud you for the autism awareness training, which I think is a great development. I mean, effectively communicating with people in crisis, all kinds of people, is such a critical part of the job, and showing that awareness, within your department about effectively training people, training how to effectively communicate with people, people who are neuroatypical is just a great development. It relates to something that I did ask of Chief Custer very close to the end of his tenure, and that is that in the report on training hours, to kind of break it down within that, on two particular areas. One is training with respect to de-escalation techniques, and secondly, training with respect to dealing with people who are in mental health crisis of some type. And I think that all goes into the part of that broader theme again of the communication part of the job. Communicate with all kinds of people in different types of situations. So I'll reiterate that ask going forward, that as you're in your presentation about training hours for the previous month, kind of give us sort of a sub-report on those two areas that I think are so important.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And sometimes the titles or the names of the training don't really encapsulate really what the training is. But a lot of what we do, I can't say everything that we do, but a lot of what we do does involve the de-escalation element of our job. Particularly when we're talking about use of force and even our firearms. Everything that we do, the first thing we are trained to do is to de-escalate. So it is a very big part of it. But I can get a full report for you of every training class we did, and I can include that in the packet for you.
Super. Thank you very much.
Councilor Prakash.
Yeah, Chief Flett, thank you so much for that comprehensive report. I actually have a couple of questions, and so I was looking at your charts, and what seems to me like kind of pretty significant, actually, decrease in number of stops. And then I looked at the charts above it, so it dropped from like 400 kind of level. Like, it was pretty consistent 2021 at the 400 level kind of and above, and then it drops to like 250, 300 right now. Where I'm going with this is, if you look at the charts above them, the thefts from motor vehicles and motor vehicle thefts, right? Both those charts, there was a spike there. I don't want to like be alarmist about it and correlate something which might not be a trend going forward. But it seems to me there could be a trend between because we always talk about omnipresence and things like that while policing in the town, and I don't know if there is something to that. So my question is really about why do we see that decline in stops, and do you think there is a correlation between that uptick which is going on right now in that green line?
Yeah, it's not lost on me. I can see the same thing you're seeing. But what I can tell you is in response to the crimes we had back in April, we have really been pushing officers to get into our neighborhoods and being visible and being there before our criminals are getting there. So we're not out necessarily maybe running less stop sign violations or less speeding violations than you might see in the past. I would expect certainly those traffic stops to go back to kind of average numbers. But that dip you're seeing in April, on top of having three of our more active officers off the road and injured, so we lost 3 productive members of our staff who will be coming back shortly. Hope to see that come up. You figure 3 or 4 officers out, 25 to 35 stops each per month, and there's your dip. But I can tell you, I'm confident to say that you can see the increase in the trend of stolen vehicles and the thefts from vehicles, and then in response to that, we've been really pushing higher level of the omnipresence of being in those neighborhoods and waving at the folks on their front deck and making sure their garages are closed when there should be, and giving a presence. So I can certainly understand it. I don't think the crime trend is a result of less traffic stops. I think there's some crews out there right now, and they were out in Cromwell today, running into Berlin. Fortunately, didn't make it into Rocky Hill, which is reflects our work. But the same thing. There's a small groups around working together to commit these crimes, and they jump town to town to town. And when you break one up, you get another one. But even today, Cromwell, Berlin, I'm not even sure if they made it to Newington, but chasing the same car around, the same black Honda, is I don't want to say daily, but it happens. And the big thing and stress here and stress with your constituents when you talk to them is you lock your doors, take out your key, and close that garage when you're going in for your lunch break. I live in the next town over, and I don't leave my car running, and I don't leave my garage open when I mow my lawn, or even when I'm home for my 30 minutes to pick something up to eat and come back. And I'm working, and I can defend myself. But if you're home and your neighbor's garage is open, remind them, they're looking for opportunities, and they're going to take them. One of my friend parked their vehicle in a dead-end circle, a place in Cromwell where no one ever goes, and had hidden her fob underneath her seat because that was safe. Well, the car got stolen. She said, well, my key was hidden, but it's in the car, and you push the button off, they go. And that's what they do. They pull your door, push the button on those, the manual starts with the buttons now, and off the cars go. So not to get off topic, I understand what you're saying, but I can tell you, as a directive for my office and with my lieutenants, was to increase our presence in those neighborhoods to reestablish some confidence and some security of our residents. And I think that could attribute to why you're seeing some less numbers this month.
Okay, great. No, thank you so much. And I do understand like the public awareness and vigilance, right, is part of it, definitely. So I don't want to underplay that. I mean, you can do your part for sure, and you are doing your part, but there's definitely people can be more aware of their surroundings and, I mean, just their stuff, I guess. One thing I wanted to call out, I don't think you called it out, but I think you have the open house for the cadet program on the 24th. So I just wanted to give an opportunity to call that out.
Yes, so it's the first time since COVID we've been able to bring this back, and Sergeant Foss Rugen, who is very involved in the state program, is holding an open house for those between 16 and 21 years old to come in and meet us and look for opportunity to get into that program. It is if you have someone interested in law enforcement, even loosely, it's a great program where kids get together, develop relationships, and get to see the job really far differently than anyone else. You have an opportunity to do so. Even just taking your ride along, you're getting into the meat and potatoes of the job, the paperwork, and the process. So there should be some announcements on our Facebook page coming up, and public announcements, and we encourage you to pass it along the message and come on in and visit us.
Yeah, that's a great program. I highly endorse that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chief.
Thank you for reminding me.
Chief, I also noticed that, what the trend's telling us, and just kind of off of your number one exhibit for us, which, outlines infractions where you actually issue, I guess, a ticket, that's down by more than a third. And usually you have the second category, the warnings issued, where you try to give more warnings than infractions because it kind of gets the message out that we're policing it. But that's also down by more than a third. So that is all due to maybe just being down-staffed, or?
I don't want to blame it on the staffing. What I'm telling you is after the results of that first week of April, we've made a big push to be present in our neighborhoods, and that's what I'm most concerned about right now. Proactive traffic stops to stop these types of crimes are important. Those don't usually lead to traffic tickets. They're usually taking off on us, but it's a great visible deterrent. But for the month of April, we have been pushing hard to be inside each neighborhood on streets. In fact, I ran a roll call the other day, and I asked them to go to some street in your district you haven't been to in a long time and go out and meet some people. And for 8 hours, I said, I don't want you to stop a car, unless you need to, of course, but get out there and let our residents see that we're out there, we're checking our streets, and we're in those back wooded areas that no one ever thinks about. And Barra Drive, in the back end 20, all these different spots where I want to give our residents that feeling that we're there, and the car showing up isn't just because something bad's happening. We're actually being proactive in that nature to maybe avoid or deter these kids driving around their cars and seeing us in their targeting areas and move on. I hate to say go to another town, but that would be great. So, if the trend continues, then that's on me, and I'll work harder to see that number go up. But for the month of April, I can tell you specifically is a result of my directions to be in those neighborhoods and being visible.
Very good. And the Hartford Task Force, I always like to ask about our activity, because I know we renewed our membership, right?
Yes.
And we're staying with that.
Mm-hmm. So Lieutenant Phelps has two detectives assigned to that program, and based on call volume, allows them to go out there for either their normal shift or at times part of that grant overtime. So we still participate And what's really great about that program is the connections and the information sharing that's taking place. It has helped us solve a lot of crimes and identify suspects and individuals, but the resources are fantastic to lean on them if we need them, but it's really the intelligence sharing that's vital for what they're doing in there to try to break up some of these crimes that are occurring on our end.
Well, we had some good numbers early in that program, maybe midway through the prior year, where we had some numbers of how many older individuals, leadership, car theft leadership was taken off the street, and
Sure.
they actually could be.
I can get that for you.
Yeah,
I'd be happy.
we'd like to hear
Sure.
some more about that if we could, if those numbers are advancing, because that did seem to make a difference, I think.
Yep, they're still very active. Not saying it's every day, because we do have our internal issues we got to take care of, but whenever we can, and it's weekly, we have assignments there, 1 or 2 guys are, going out there. But, we're still actively participating.
Sure. Thank you. Just turning to staff, any old or new business, Bill?
None here. I'm all set. Thank
Motion
you.
to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.